Right, back live tonight in Focus. Still reflecting on the by-elections, the IFP winning that Ward 13 in uMhlathuze with 53% of the votes. The ward was previously held by the ANC. Let's get some political analysis now, joined by Dr Fikile Vilakazi. Dr Vilakazi, good to have you, and thank you very much for coming on. Is the ANC weaker than it perceives itself to be in KwaZulu-Natal? I mean, this ward should literally have been an easy win for the ANC, which, as I say, held 53% in 2021, but seemed to have lost all that.
Good evening, Thabo, and to viewers at home. I don't actually think that what is happening uMhlathuze is an indication of the weakness of the ANC, but I think it's more symbolic about the character and the texture of the politics in KwaZulu-Natal at the moment. As you know, Thabo, that the reason why these by-elections are happening is because there's been this attempt of, a couple of assassinations on the previous, candidate who decided to resign, uNdlovu, because of that. So there's that happening, and I think it's just reality hitting home to say, if one really has to stand up and wanting to close the gap around the politics and servicing the people of KwaZulu-Natal, you are actually laying down your life. It's a matter of life and death. I think there's that. But also, Thabo, I think it's also signaling a sort of a changing landscape, especially after the passing of Umntwana, Prince Wakwapindangene, and the rhetoric that this has brought back into the psyche of the politics of KwaZulu-Natal in the context of the IFP. Because we know IFP has been losing ground, over time to the ANC. As you know, this word Ward 13 was in the hands of the ANC. Yeah. But now that they are emerging above 50% in this by-election, shows you the power of the energy of just the body of Prince Umntwana in the politics of KwaZulu-Natal. And I think the voter of the IFP has shown that. It's just a week or so ago that there's been that spirited celebration of his passing, and I think it resurfaced a lot of charisma. It resurfaced a lot of some of the things that the current generation of IFP were not even aware about, the role that Prince Umntwana played in the politics of the IFP, but also the connection that politic has had with the liberation struggle. And I think that has got a role that it has played, definitely, in saying to members of Inkatha Freedom Party, perhaps it is time for us to come back again in power and in force. And I think this kind of vote, uMhlathuze shows us that as well. And they are rejuvenated. It seems that they want to prepare for 2024 even more. And it's that. So in a way, we could say it is going to definitely weaken the ANC going towards 2024, especially Thabo and viewers at home, because there's also this coalition that seems to be strengthening itself between the IFP and the DA. And it has been happening even before, when the ANC was in power in Ward 13. Yeah. But now we are seeing DA is bringing in Chris Papas. Chris is loved by the people of KwaZulu-Natal. He speaks the language, he understands the culture. Of course, there are other issues that are emerging around his character and fraudulent allegations. But again, in that, we are seeing the preparation between IFP and ADA really wanting to unseat the ANC as they've been imagining.
And that's what I wanted to come to next. I wanted to come to the fact that maybe could it be the fact of the candidates that were fielded, right? Sbusiso Ndunagazi for the IFP, the ANC fielded Tandega Makuchwa, the EFF fielding Lucky Nzima. The EFF also lost quite huge ground. From 10%, they only managed to garner 1% this time around, and the ANC 46%. How much of that is going to do with the candidate and whether that candidate resonates with the people in the area?
There's a lot. There's a lot. I mean, we know politics is about people. It's about personalities, and that plays a role. People love, certain candidates for whatever they stand for, and they'll always vote along those lines, whether we like it or not. Politics is a game of personalities, and the stronger you are, the more convincing you are to the people, the more people are going to vote for you. And it's just that. It has got nothing to do, unfortunately, on whether you are delivering to the people, but I think it's more about charisma and charm. And if you are able to charm people in these ways that we have seen, the candidate that has been brought by IFP, doing within the members of the Inkatha Freedom Party, and of course voting for that candidate. And I think surrounded by the cloud of the spirit that I've just spoken about, of the Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, and wanting to showcase the leadership of Baba uMhlathuze. People are really, let me say, the body politic of South Africa and KwaZulu-Natal as well, particularly Inkatha Freedom Party. There are those things that are shaking to say, I wonder if Baba uMhlathuze will be able to fill these very huge shoes, Zaga Prince Umntwana, So they are bringing in candidates that have got some level of charisma to the people. And I think in this particular case, Ward 13, we've seen that happening. And there's fear around the ANC, clearly. No one would have come up after uMhlathuze, at least not stronger, against the IFP in that ward, especially because there's also these things of political killings, Thabo, that seem to be linked to the institution of Izinkabi, that are largely associated with the IFP, and there's that reality as well, and fear.
So, this puts the IFP, I suppose, I don't know whether this is the only municipality where they have such an arrangement, but at the helm of the coalition. So it also gives them a little bit of headroom. They don't need, for example, the ACDP to vote with them. They have almost their own outright majority, so to speak, in terms of governing this particular municipality. Is this going to set, I suppose, also somewhat of a different tone and dynamic as far as the coalition relations?
I think it will. The people of KwaZulu-Natal are desperate to reorganize the province. What this vote does for IFP basically it gives it a 50-50 chance of ruling the municipality with the ANC, whereas previously they were lower than that. And what it then does, it also strengthens the conversations that it is having with the DA around the coalition and the charter that they've been talking about, in relation to unseating the ANC. So it's giving the IFP a lot of political strength, preparing for also doing the same in other wards, because the IFP, as we've been saying, has been losing a lot of clout. But I think they're likely to use the strategy that they've used here, uMhlathuze, to say you don't necessarily want to have your ACDP and other smaller parties that have been in coalition and supporting even the NFP, who has been supporting Inkatha a lot, uMhlathuze. They can do with the coalition of EDA, and they're likely then to probably move in that direction. And I think it will sort of give confidence to some of the municipalities and wards where they've lost ground, to say perhaps we can still regain before we go to 2024. Who knows? There's always chance. Who knew that uMhlathuze was going to resign, uMhlathuze, and this is what was going to happen? So politics is a game of that kind of thing. That is about chance, it's about opportunity, and in this case they seem to have maximized it, and to their favor, I must say, because 2024 is just a couple of months to go. And in a way, it sort of put them up, in a certain way. And in Baba Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi really has galvanized the IFP in KwaZulu-Natal. So I think they are looking. But it doesn't mean it's just going to be a train smash in a gravy route. Politics is a challenging game, Thabo, especially KwaZulu. There are issues of the royal family that are unresolved. That question may destabilize the IFP very, very badly. I think it's something that the IFP would need to look into. Number of political parties, the ANC, the EFF, are really looking into utilizing that platform to gain political power in the region. And you need to be deeply involved in the royal family to be able to galvanize politically KwaZulu-Natal. Unfortunately, as we know, the IFP was very much linked to those politics as well. So we just have to wait and see what's going on.
Others saying this is, as you've already mentioned, I suppose also an enduring testament to the legacy of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. But I suppose, in a way, many people thought, okay, with uMntwana gone, what is going to become of the IFP? Will it still remain a formidable force in South African politics? Does that, I suppose, settle that debate and dispel any of those thoughts around whether the IFP will now die a slow death now that the prince is no longer there, at least as the figure that kept it alive?
It's a very complex question, that one. I think for KwaZulu-Natal as a province, probably it does exactly what you are saying. It settles the score to say everywhere else in South Africa, maybe not, but here in KwaZulu-Natal, Inkatha Yenkululeko Yesizwe is entrenched, which you now is Inkatha Freedom Party. And I think that spirit of the prince, the legacy of the prince has revived itself in KwaZulu-Natal. And they will do anything to make sure that it survives, because it's centered around issues of land, around issues of Ingonyama Trust. And we know that debate is at a delicate phase, in the sense that government wants to repeal Ingonyama Trust Act. And I don't think Inkatha Freedom Party is going to take that battle line down. So they are going to galvanize politically, make sure that they mobilize the royal family to maintain Ingonyama Trust, at the interest of saying KwaZulu doesn't want to lose land. You'll remember at the memorial and at the funeral, someone said, if you ever touch the land, meaning that you would have touched the Zulu nation. So there's an intention there politically. So in as far as KwaZulu-Natal is concerned, I think, yes, the score has been settled, but I'm not sure about other provinces. Issues remain unresolved. In Gauteng, for example, where the People's War affected a lot of families who are not even necessarily members of Inkatha Freedom Party. And I think the questions that have been surfacing on the public domain are not resolved for the people of Gauteng, in as far as the legacy of the People's War and the damages, of course, of the widows there, fragmented families and so on. So that would need to be tested on the polls, whether the IFP can convince voters in Gauteng, for example, around its political cloud, as it is able to easily do in KwaZulu-Natal. So it's going to be different for each and every province. Perhaps this is where their coalition with the DA would become an area of strength, because they share a similar ideology of federalism, right? And I think the DA is trying to push to say, where you are stronger, you must rule. So the KZN is likely to be led by IFP in that regard, because of through a federal approach. But that is not an approach that is currently a system that is happening everywhere in South Africa. They would need to really work hard to convince provinces like Gauteng, Northwest, Eastern Cape, and so on, in that regard. And I think that's not going to happen in 2024. That's something really that they would need to work hard on. It's not going to rely on the legacy of Prince uMangosuthu Buthelezi alone, but also on the project of healing and reconciliation and honesty to the people and survivors of the People's War.
Dr. Fikile Vilakazi, much appreciated. Thank you very much for your analysis tonight. Political analyst there, following the landslide win by the IFP in the uMhlathuze local municipality there.